Hello everyone. This video is going to be a little different to the other ones I've made before. Well, for one, I'm actually doing a voiceover this time, and two, this is a video essay slash rant style video, I guess. I hope to do more of this kind of stuff in the future, so I'm excited to see how well this will do. This video is all about LFG slash Fireteam Finder and some of my concerns with it. Some of you may or may not know, I have quite a bit of experience with LFG and Fireteam Finder while doing my Ghost of the Deep runs, as they are my main source of completions. As such, the concerns I'll talk about are mostly from a PvE side of the game and not so much the PvP side. This video is split into 6 parts, for which I'll discuss the main problems I and many others experience with LFG, one being some main takeaways from each point, and lastly a conclusion slash closing thoughts. So without further delay, let's move into the first major concern, being probably the most major point of concern is communicating and being transparent with the people you're doing an activity with. If you're doing anything that requires some kind of coordination, then you need to be able to convey to the people you're playing with what is actually happening. For the majority of activities in the game, you don't really need to talk to your fellow guardians, but there are some activities where communication is key. Raids, dungeons, high-ranked PvP, GM nightfalls, master raids and dungeons are some examples that come to mind. Raids and dungeons especially, since how the mechanics work for said activities. This shouldn't be a hard take to understand, as these activities are made with the intent of team cooperation and communication, but there's been so many times where someone will join these activities, not have a mic or text chat on, and will inadvertently cause some problems by either not knowing how something works, dying too many times from mechanics or ads, or just by seeing something shiny and interacting with it when they weren't supposed to. Another thing is just being transparent with the rest of your team. If you join a know what to do or experience requested LFG post, and you have never done said activity, at least say something and let everyone know you have no idea what's going on. You can't expect to join and just be carried through without any problems. Most people just want to get in, get out, say GG's, and call it a day. Let's take an example of this with Crow's End. The main mechanic is the Chalice of Light buff, and it depends on your teammates to take the chalice from you once you're full. All you need to do is say take in chat and move on with the encounter, and people still struggle to do that still. Saying one word is something that is apparently really difficult for some people to say, and then when people die over and over and over again because someone can't or won't communicate, then people leave and you're back at square one again. Now, most activities aren't too reliant on lots of communication, like some raids and dungeons, but for stuff like master dungeons or even master raids or even master raid challenges, communication is essential and should be prioritized. You can't really blame the fireteam leader for kicking someone that refuses or cannot talk in any way because of how useful it is to correctly convey to everyone else what's going on. Now, people who actively do LFGs aren't really going to care if you have or have not done something, especially if they're chill and are with a group that is willing to teach. Most people aren't too bothered when someone doesn't know what to do, and will take the 5 minutes to explain what's going on and what everyone's role is. You shouldn't be too afraid to say, hey, I've never done this before, could you just explain what's going on so I'm not completely lost? And usually someone will do so. Now, this really only applies to normal mode raids and dungeons and maybe nightfalls. Master mode raids and dungeons shouldn't be the place to learn how to do something for the first time, especially when doing raid challenges. That has happened to me a few times where I'm doing a master challenge, and after wiping a few times, someone says, by the way, I've never actually done this encounter before. Like, what? Why would you join then? There are other places to learn what to do. Master mode or challenge is not one of them. I know the reason some people don't like speaking up is also because they've had bad experiences with people yelling at them and belittling them for not knowing what to do or asking for some help. If you've had the misfortune of encountering this or being a victim of this, first of all, I'm sorry that you've had that experience. You shouldn't be insulted because you asked for help. Second, those kinds of people don't represent the rest of the community. And lastly, do always have the option to leave if you run into someone like that. Also, probably shouldn't argue against someone like that. They'll always believe that they are in the right to treat someone like that. It is probably best to just find a new group and ignore them. I mean, this kind of segues into my next point of concern, being the people with, The biggest turnoff that I've seen for the majority of players in the game from even using LFG are the elitist and toxic player base. The people who ego everyone on the team about how many raid completions they have, how many day ones they have, and take the damage end screen numbers just way too seriously. They're also the kind of people who will judge everyone on the Fireteam about what they use in each encounter or session every time people wipe or lose a match or something of the sort. I have seen so many LFG horror stories from so many people about some toxic asshole collectively bullying people out playing a game, or judging everyone on the team for what they are using, or most famously, kicking people before they have a chance at loot or a completion. I think Pantheon was the perfect time for all these kinds of people to come out and riddle LFGs with toxicity and hate. If you don't remember Pantheon or weren't around for it, it was a raid boss gauntlet with escalating difficulty and additional counters added each week. It was how you earned the Godslayer title that you may have seen some players wearing. It was also a limited time event, only lasting 5 weeks, and the title only being available to be finished the last 2 weeks. And so, as you might have guessed, LFG was fuming with people trying to get their hands on that title, even though a percentage of people trying to go for it probably did not have the experience or skill necessary of comfortably earning it. I emphasize comfortably there just because these kinds of people who were in Pantheon thought they could just tag along for encounters, do the absolute minimum, and walk out with their shiny new title. LFGing Pantheon was one of the worst times to start and try LFG because of all these Godslayers and egotistical assholes that were in there just trying to farm loot or something and got fed up when someone didn't know how to do an encounter or do enough good damage. If you were on the receiving end of these people, I am sorry you had to deal with someone like that, especially if you're new to the game or the community in general. Not everyone in the community is like this though. Most of the community is actually the complete opposite. Most people I've met through LFG have been pretty chill and open and understanding. The best advice I can give you if you encounter someone like this is just to either kick them, ask to kick them, or just leave yourself and find a new group. None of this should be shocking to hear, but I feel maybe sometimes it's good to be reminded about it. At the end of the day, you're all doing the activity for loot or a triumph, so there's no need to act like you're the best person there and everyone should be kissing your ass. It does nothing but instigate unnecessary conflict. It's also the kind of people who have no patience and get really mad at everyone for wiping or dying more than twice. Then they'll leave or tell everyone what they should be doing, and then everyone else gets mad, and then everyone else leaves, and you're back in orbit. Playing with 5 other people where no one knows and no one understands everyone else's playstyles takes some time to get acquainted to and comfortable with. You can't expect everyone to have great connection with everyone when you join, so having patience and learning some people's playstyles will make some experiences go smoother and better overall, especially when they matter more in certain activities like trials or high-ranked comp. Some of the time though, these people are hypocritical and they themselves are the problem. They won't take any accountability for it and will make up any excuse if it means they'll protect their fragile ego. Let me know if you heard some of these before. Someone's connection must be awful. No one's doing ad clear. Person A was too slow. Person B shot the wrong thing. I didn't have enough ammo. You walked in front of me and I blew myself up, along with countless more excuses. I understand getting frustrated at people when you continuously fail over and over again, but there's really no reason to be toxic about a situation like that. You can be mad and angry with your teammates, sure, but I don't think it's the greatest idea to yell and berate them, because all that does is make everyone more frustrated and just play worse, leading back into the negativity cycle. You can always take a break and come back to it another time. Even in day 1 raids, people will take a 15-minute break to eat or something just to clear their minds and get right back into things. Now, if you run into someone like this who tries to control everything or belittles the people who use suboptimal setups, you can't just leave to find a new group. It does take some time to find a new group though, especially if it's for an activity no one really wants to do, but if it means less of a headache, then, why not? Now, this kind of behavior doesn't just come from elitists either. People on the opposite side of the skill bracket can be the toxic prick just the same, if not more than the elitists. People who expect to do ad clear every time or just get carried through and then yell at everyone else for not doing their job right when they aren't even doing anything. It's uncommon, but not impossible to see. This kind of leads into my third point too, being there's been so many times where when I do a Sherpa run and go out of my way trying to explain, teach, and guide someone through ghosts, that they'll just ignore everything I said and go off on their own, or just sit in the back of the map and kill ads the entire time. I even ask if someone who hasn't done it before, if they'd like to be taught and have everything explained. They'll say yes, and I'll do so, but they still just ignore everything and continue to just kill ads or go out on their own. I'm not sure how bad it is for raid Sherpas, but I can only imagine that it's even worse for them, considering you can't really solo carry most of the raids and you need others to do a role. I understand people learn differently and everyone's somewhat unique in that regard, but sometimes it seems that people just aren't willing to learn on the fly and just want to be carried through. For dungeons, PvP, and even nightfalls, that's fine if you're good enough to solo carry. But for raids or activities designed for multiple people working together, it can be really challenging to teach. Root of Nightmares is probably the perfect example of this. In my opinion, Root of Nightmares may have single-handedly ruined LFGing for raids, at least for a while after its release. Root of Nightmares feels so much like a 6-man dungeon rather than a raid, just because you can literally have 2 to 4 people on ad clear the entire raid. First, second, and last encounter can have 2 people doing the main mechanics, and the rest can just sit there and kill ads. Planets or the third encounter has some more roles, and 4 people probably should be doing mechanics to make the encounter go much more smoothly. Do you need 4 people? No, but it definitely helps to have more people to make the encounter go faster. I think that's one of the reasons why third encounter is so difficult for people and why so many teams get stuck on it. The amount of people who think that every other raid is like Root of Nightmares and thinks that they can get by every raid by just doing ad clear and not have to learn anything is surprising. In Root of Nightmares, they're allowed to get away with this just because of how the raid itself is designed. Obviously, if you have more people contributing and actually helping with mechanics, it will make the raid go by faster. But why do so if you can have 2 relatively good players do everything for basically 3/4 of the raid? I believe every other raid LFG has been hit by the impact of how simple Root of Nightmares is. I've seen a lot of posts on LFG that say know what to do on ad clear or something like that. I understand wanting to just be carried through for the loot because that's probably what most people want anyway, but if people contributed and actually did a mechanic, it would make the whole experience that much better and go by faster. I'm sure that some raid Sherpas have had to explain things like 18 times before something finally clicks and they realize, oh, that's what you're supposed to do? I know I've had to explain things a few times before something finally clicks for people. Again, I can't really speak from experience on raid Sherpa-ing, and for those people who make it their jobs to do that, you have my utmost respect for doing so. Now there's a difference between knowing what's going on and choosing not to do it, and knowing what's going on but have never actually done it before. Why I ask if people would like me to explain things is because sometimes they say they have never done it before, but have watched a video going over it or something. Knowing the mechanics and executing said mechanics in real time are 2 different things. People who know what to do but lack experience is a step up from being lazy and just wanting to be carried through. Having patience to let people learn on their own and figuring out how everything works is key for new people in LFG in general. Patience is one of the most important things to have when doing an activity with someone who's never done it before. Letting people do something they've never done before is important to help grow people's understanding of how something works. If you teach someone how to do something, then they keep doing that job enough, eventually they will have mastered that role, and then in turn can teach someone else how to do that role. It's a positive feedback loop that only works if someone is willing to step up and explain, or let someone else do whatever job/activity it may be. But having a lack of patience can ultimately lead to a negative feedback loop, where someone might mess up and then get yelled at for not knowing what they did wrong, which in turn leads to them not wanting to try and learn again, which will then lead to them being on ag clear, some less meaningful role, or just straight up get kicked from the activity. There's also people who have only ever done a certain role and will only want to do that role. Some people don't want to adapt to a new situation and will just stick to familiarity rather than try something new. When forced to change the role, they will more than likely just leave and try to find another group. The amount of people who will just leave the second they get assigned a role they don't want to do or get called out on not doing a certain job very well is a lot. If they don't get their way, someone wipes too many times, or someone keeps dying over and over again, they're gone, and there's no consequences to doing so, which then leads to This section is pretty self-explanatory, so I'll keep it brief. How many times have you encountered a situation in a raid or nightfall where you wipe once or twice and people leave? And once one person leaves, it creates a snowball effect where 1 turns into 2, which turns into 4, and then you're back in orbit by yourself. Or how many times have you launched an activity and as soon as you spawn in, someone leaves immediately, wasting not only their time, but your time as well, because now you more than likely need to find someone else to fill their position. Or how about dying in a GM without any revives and the 2 people still alive are fighting a war for their lives, trying to finish the nightfall, and the person dead just leaves, leaving the 2 of you on your own. You could manage and finish the nightfall, or you could get overwhelmed and end up wiping with an extra revive token for the now departed teammate that never gave you a chance to save them. It is extremely frustrating to wait 10 to 20 minutes for someone to join your post only for them not to want to do it, or for them not to realize what they're getting into and leave. A rare occurrence that has happened to me was someone joining a raid checkpoint and purposely failing or dying to get themselves that same checkpoint, and then leaving after the inevitable wipe they caused. This is what is called a dick move. It's different when they at least say what their intentions are, but if they go in and don't say anything, then it's just annoying. The main points I would make to people who are causing these problems or are affected by them is 1. Have some form of communication established before getting too deep into an activity that basically requires it. At the very least, have text chat on or voice chat enabled so you know what is going on and what people are trying to say. I understand having it disabled for PvP because, well, people are assholes, but please turn it on when doing a cooperative activity. It will help so much for everyone involved. I'm not saying you actually have to use it, even though I recommend you do so, but just being able to see what other people say to convey information is a lifesaver. I know using it on console and typing with a controller is very annoying, but shortening answers to just yes and no or something of the sort will save on time. For a majority of all players, having clear comms and being able to tell what's going on to your teammates is key. You need to be active and help your team out whenever possible to understand what's happening at any given moment. 2. Just don't be an asshole. Don't go around like you're the greatest player in the game because no one really cares. Having an inflated ego is not something to be proud of. 3. There's nothing wrong with asking for help or asking for something to be explained. If you have not done the activity you are LFGing, say something please. Do not expect to be carried through everything and don't expect to be on ag clear every time. Adapt and learn the activities. Don't be afraid to learn new things or try different strategies. It's okay to not know something as well as someone else, or at all for that matter. 4. Have patience when playing with an entirely new group. Understand that people play differently and people need some time to adjust to others' playstyles. 5. Don't just leave immediately or leave after a few wipes. try and at least make an effort to stay and get through the activity. I've made myself a rule for if I do raids or any other harder activities, there seems to be no progress happening after like, I don't know, 15 to 20 resets. Maybe it's time to find another team. And finally, I can't believe I actually need to make a point of this, but please, when you join an LFG for an activity, make sure you actually have access or own the activity. It's happened to me more times than I'd like to admit where I go to launch ghosts and it says someone doesn't even own the dungeon. To be completely honest, I'm not really sure Bungie themselves can fix these issues. Most of the problems stem from the individual level and not really something they can control. An idea I've had is for them to implement a vote to kick system maybe, something that gives more players control without outright making them have a ton of power over everyone. Granted, it could still be abused by people who are in a group of 3 or more, but at least in theory, it can help fix some of the issues, mainly toxic players plaguing LFG. You can also make it so you can kick the leader as well if they are the problem. The leader can still retain the power to kick people, but giving more control to the rest of the team could be a net positive. I'm thinking this can only be added to raids though, since having the majority rules with only 3 people while one of them is the person they want to kick could be a little one-sided. Another idea I've had was to make an in-game earnable Sherpa emblem. We already sort of have this with the 10 raid Sherpas or carries giving you access to an emblem that you would then redeem at Bungie's website, but I would like to see it expanded a bit. Like, what if it was an in-game earnable triumph that gave you the base emblem at 10 carries, but extra variants add more carries? Like a special variant at 25 carries, 50, 100, maybe even like 250 or 500 for that matter. Give something for people to chase while also letting those people guide, help, or just carry someone else through something they might not even have been able to. It's a win-win situation. You're helping someone else through something while also working towards a special reward goal for yourself. They could also do it for dungeons or trials even. I do think the situation of LFG has gotten a little better over the past few months, but it is far from being perfect. And to be honest, I'm not sure how the LFG experience is from a more casual perspective. Maybe it's worse, maybe it's better, I really don't know. Well, that's about all I have to say on this topic. I do have plans to do more scripted and video essay style videos in the future, so any feedback is appreciated. Also, if you have any LFG horror stories of your own, I'd love to hear them. I'm sure others would like to hear them as well, just to marvel at the insanity that can be LFG. If there's anything you think I left out or anything you would like to add onto any of my points I made, please let me know. I don't LFG all aspects of the game, so there very well might be some things I have not included. Well, until next time, see ya.